What is the difference between an excuse and a reason?
Kind of a good question, right?
Sure.
Okay. And the reason it's a good question because there can be legitimate reasons why things happen.
Yeah.
Right? And so, for instance, you're in a sailing race, right? In a sailboat.
Sure.
And the mast snaps in half. Now you don't win the race.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you didn't, the mast snapped.
Yeah.
What can you do about that? Or the horrible weather rolls in and you can't launch your aircraft, so you can't go on your mission.
Right.
Well, you can't control the weather, so, like, what's up? How can that? That's a reason. Or you get really sick, so you can't compete in a competition. That's a reason. You were sick. Oh, you do bad because you were sick, and it's a reason, could be called. Now you could look at the situation and say, okay, if I'm going to take ownership of this, did I properly test the mast?
Sure.
Did I?
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Did we have a ground-based plan for the operation in case the weather came in, we were going to take vehicles instead? Right?
Yeah.
That would work. If you get sick before the competition, maybe you ask yourself, were you resting properly? Were you eating properly going into the competition so you wouldn't get sick? You could address that, correct?
Yes, sir.
So you can still take ownership of things even if the initial reaction is like, oh, well, you can't control that. Well, you can influence it. You could mitigate it, right? Now, can there still be legitimate reasons? Yes, there can. And for me, the difference, the line between an excuse and a reason is a reason you have zero control over. Right? You just have zero control over something happening. Well, that's a reason. Did I tell you I was almost late the other day for something?
No.
Because this is borderline.
Uh-huh.
I had an appointment at 10 o'clock. I left. It was a 20-minute drive.
Mm-hmm.
I left an hour. I left about 9:10. I left 50 minutes to drive 20 minutes.
Right.
Just so going to make it on time.
Yeah.
I get on the road, basically a couple roads out of my house, and the one entry way to get on the freeway is locked down.
Like incident, like isolate some incident went on.
A guy trying to kill himself
on
a bridge.
Yeah.
Shut the road down.
Incident, yeah.
So no one's going on the highway. So what is it? Everyone's being channelized into marginal, what are they called? Back side streets.
Yeah.
Detours, rerouted.
Yeah.
The clock is ticking. And I made it, right? I was 4 minutes. I had 4 minutes to spare. So instead of it taking 20 minutes, it took 46 minutes. It took more than twice as long. That could be, a fairly legitimate reason. Mm-hmm. Now, luckily, I had planned that there could be something out of my control and it might take even longer. And that's why I leave early to go to an appointment or a situation like that. So I could have also checked the traffic prior to leaving and taken a completely different route. That would have been, I blame myself. So even in that situation, I was thinking the whole time, why didn't I check the traffic before I left? I knew this could have happened. So anyways, in my opinion, an excuse is when you blame something that you could have controlled. And a reason is something that you have absolutely no control over whatsoever. You think like a legit disease. I mean, sometimes people you can't control that. It happens. But I think this is the important part, I think that what you will find, especially when you approach the world with an attitude of extreme ownership, and that's that you're not going to make any excuses, you're not going to blame anyone else, is that you actually have a lot more control over things than you think you do. We've talked about this before. When I go to the airport, I get there really early because it's something that you have no control over. You're going to stand in that TSA line and those people are going to take forever, and that's the way it is. And if you want to get mad at them, it doesn't matter. You cannot control it in any way. You can stand at the back and my flight's leaving in 30 minutes and they'll be like, whatever, you should have showed up earlier.
Yeah.
You can't control it. So in those situations, how do you control it? You show up early. You take ownership of it. You show up early. You don't just, I don't know what happened. The traffic was bad. I mean, there's a million excuses you can give. If you get that attitude where you're not going to make excuses, then you'll actually take ownership of the things, and then you'll actually solve problems before they even happen. If I'm going to an appointment and I have the excuse in my back of my head that, you know what, if I'm late, I'll just say it was the traffic. Yeah. I have a much more increased chance of being late.
Yeah.
All right. So that's one of the things that makes extreme ownership hard is it hurts your ego. It hurts your ego. It hurts your ego to admit that you have control over things that went wrong. It's your fault. That hurts your ego.
Yeah.
It's also effective because of that. It's effective because you solve problems, like I said, before they even happen. You solve them because you take ownership of them.
Yeah, man. But isn't this just a bunch of semantics, though, like excuses and reasons? Because really, when it comes down to it, excuse is like an excuse, like you're excused. Like the reason is a reason, for sure, but it's like...
Well, that's what this whole conversation... Yes, right. It is about semantics, and the semantics are, for me... An excuse is something that you could have controlled, and a reason is something that you could not control.
Well, aren't they all reasons? So it's up to, I mean, again, look, you say tomato, I say I get it, but come on, hey, you brought it up. So so I remember when I was in elementary school, you come late to school, you get in trouble unless you have an excuse. Now, there's a difference between, and I'm saying in the field, in class, right? You come into class. If you have just your own excuse, like, oh, my, dog ate it, or I don't know, that's for homework, but whatever. That's different than if you have an excuse slip, which is an official slip. Your parents or your whatever, you went to the office.
I'll support your movement to get excuse slips changed to reason slips.
Right, exactly.
Because that's what it is. It's a legitimate reason.
Exactly.
The kid had chicken pox, can't come to school.
Yes.
You can't come.
Yeah.
There's nothing. You got chicken pox. That's how.
Yeah, that's how. So, but now, given that, aren't we just talking about a very like a standard from case to case? So, like, let's go back to elementary school. Bruh, bear with me. You want to get to the bottom of this? I'm telling you.
Okay.
If your parents
by a thread,
if your parents had car trouble, right?
Yeah.
Is that an excuse for a 9-year-old?
For a 9-year-old?
Yeah.
It is a reason for a 9-year-old.
So that falls on the hierarchy of standards, but within the standard of being a quote-unquote legitimate excuse, right? Because that's really what it is. So a reason, in your case, a reason is a legitimate excuse. A legitimate excuse. Yeah. That's a reason as far as this question goes.
Absolutely. In fact, I think I used the word legitimate in this when I was talking about it.
Yeah. And so using the word reasons rather than excuse is just like, okay, let's make the language more simple rather than, because if you have an excuse, that's that by its very nature, by its very definition, you're excused. It's an excuse. You're excused from being late or being late to your appointment, whatever. But if it's weird because if someone else gives you the excuse, like you're excused, hey, the guy was about to commit suicide. I get it, man. You're excused kind of thing. It's like that's an excuse. In this case, a legitimate one. But if you give it to yourself, that's the excuse that nobody likes, right? Like, hey, man, traffic. Oh, you should have prepared for that.
Yeah.
Hey, man, my, whatever was going on and this and that. Oh, man, you got to prepare for that. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, I guess so.
So there you go.
I'll go with it.
So reasons and legitimate excuses, same thing.
Yeah, I'll give you that. You could have said that like 4 minutes ago, but we'll go with it.
I'm just saying you got to explain these things because sometimes they're hard to understand. I'm telling you.
No. See, the more you talked about it, the less I understood it until you said the last thing.
I had to sum it up.
Okay.
See what I'm saying?
The summary was great. I'll give you
Thanks, bro.
a B+ on the summary.
All right, bro. Thanks. I'll take it. Thank you.
Yeah.